Welcome to episode 6 of Renewing the Conversation, a series of interviews where we talk to leading industry professionals and experts about renewable energy and heating with a focus on the home and what challenges face the industry and homeowners.
Today, welcome Ian Rippin, CEO of MCS. We talk to Ian about MCS's role in renewable heating, how the MCS protects homeowners and why good quality installations are really important, and what plans they have to encourage, support and educate installers.
But before we get started, we want to say a huge thank you to today's sponsor, IMS Heat Pumps, an award-winning ground and air source heat pump installation company that provides customers with bespoke systems for their hot water and heating needs. To find out more, head over to www.imsheatpumps.co.uk.
Don't forget to hit the subscribe button below and please show us your support by giving us a thumbs up. Enjoy the interview. Hi, morning Ian. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking some time out. You're very busy over at the MCS and we're very excited to speak to you and just to learn a little bit more about the MCS. Yeah. I remember when we started to look at heat pumps and heat source.
Yeah.
And we were very new. We didn't know we had no idea about the industry.
Very little.
We knew very little about it. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that we kept on coming up when we were doing our research was look at the MCS, make sure that whatever you do with regards to an installation, the MCS is involved. And at the time, we really didn't know what that meant.
It was just the term, basically. And I think we still see a lot of homeowners that are basically saying, I need to go with MCS, I need to go with MCS. But I think that's just something a message that's been drummed in. So I guess our question is, what is the MCS?
Yeah, very good question. And great advice, by the way, to go to the MCS. But kind of what is it? So MCS, of course, is the Microgeneration Certification Scheme. So MCS for short. It is, we're a standards organisation at our heart. So MCS incorporates industry-led, industry-developed standards in terms of best practice and quality. If you're installing a heat pump, there is an MCS standard for that. If you're installing a solar PV system on your roof, there's an MCS standard for that. So MCS incorporates these standards right at its heart. And then around that is the certification scheme. How do you know whether you're complying with the MCS standard, either as a product manufacturer or an installer? And that's the certification scheme. That's independently assessed by certification bodies who come along and say, okay, let me have a look at the way you're managing your business and the way you're delivering quality in the field for consumers. And that's the assessment of whether you're complying with MCS or not. So that's essentially what MCS is.
So how did the MCS come about? When did it start? Who started it? What is the history behind the MCS?
Well, MCS is 14 years old, and it was started by government. It used to be part of the Department of Business, and it was novated. It was spun out of that department in 2018. So it started life as a government scheme. And there was a recognition at that time that there wasn't a clear written down description of best practice for this sector. It was a sector, certainly with solar, it was in its infancy. That's the right time actually to start to write standards. So BEIS, Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, it was called something different then, but that's what it is now, asked BRE to start to think about building standards and a scheme around that. So it's gone through, it's got quite a history in terms of standards organisations. That's a fairly long bit of time. And over that time, we've been collecting lots of information about the installations that are certified under the scheme. So MCS is this rich source of data about who buys what, where and when, and what they're having installed on their properties based on that scheme. So that's the start, the origins, if you like, of the MCS story.
Right. And so what are the benefits to homeowners using the MCS or utilising MCS as part of their installation and when they're looking at putting renewables into their home?
So it's about trust, really. If you are a manufacturer of, say, a heat pump, and you've had to comply to the standards, you've had to have that product tested, That's about showing that your product is fit for purpose, is designed appropriately for use in a domestic or a small business setting. Then linked to that is the installer. So is the installer compliant with the standards of the land? And that's what MCS represents. So together, you've got an installer installing a product that's both of which are certified. That is essentially the scheme. So you can trust that there's been a rigorous assessment of both the product and the installer's competency and their ability to deliver quality every time for every consumer. And of course, I would say the best thing to do is go for an MCS installer using an MCS certified product.
So is it a fair point to say that an MCS certified installer can install a non-certified MCS heat pump, for example?
No, that's there is this lock, there's this link between an MCS installer has to use MCS certified products because that's how we guarantee the quality. So the product has been quality assessed and the installer's business, the contractor, has been quality assessed. So together you get that lock. The installer can issue their customer with an MCS certificate. And really what that MCS certificate is a statement from that installer, that contractor, saying to their customer, I've used appropriate product, I've designed and installed the system that's fit for your needs, and here's my certificate of evidence to do that. It's a declaration, if you like, that they've complied with the proven standards of the market.
So not only does MCS give homeowners the assurance that what the product that they've chosen, what's going into their home is of a high standard, that the installation is going to be of a high standard, it also gives them access to grants such as the RHI, Renewable Heating Incentive.
Yeah.
That's right.
I know that's being phased out kind of next year, but how is the connection between the MCS and the RHI, and why is that also equally important to homeowners?
Typically, to access a government incentive, a grant or a scheme like the Domestic Renewable Heat Incentive, RHI, you need an MCS certificate. So where public money is being spent to help our transition of our energy and our heating in particular along this road to net zero by 2050, then government prescribe that you need an MCS certificate. They want to be sure that the money that they're putting into this, our money as taxpayers, is being used by quality. You know, it's going to deliver quality installations. And so that is why MCS is written into primary legislation that underpins, for example, the Domestic Renewable Heat Incentive, which does come to an end at the end of March next year. Then there'll be a gap. There is always a gap. And then we're waiting to see what follows it. But it's likely to be a grant-based scheme. Again, that'll have MCS written into it. So you'll still need an MCS certificate. An upfront grant to a consumer to say, we're going to help you with the cost of deploying a heat pump, a biomass system, solar thermal. In electricity generating technologies, there isn't a government incentive. The last one was the feed-in tariff. That came to an end at the end of March 2019. And at that point, the market was saying, well, why do I need MCS? Why do I need MCS? There's no government incentive for me to access now. But I'm really pleased to say that the market determined that actually complying with the quality regime, proven standards, is the right thing to do for their businesses and for their customers. So we still have lots of solar PV installs, even without a government incentive being in place.
So you just touched on that the RHI is going to be phasing out. There might be new grants coming in. Are you referring to the clean heat grant? And what do we know about the clean heat grant so far?
Really good question. What do we know? I mean, nothing's been officially announced yet by our colleagues in government, but with the working title Clean Heat Grant. So the latest we have on this is we believe this grant will be something like £7,000, payable hopefully to the installer. So there's no issue over payment and cash flow for lots of smaller installers are on our scheme. So that's an important consideration. We believe that'll come in a few months after the end of domestic RHI. So there will be this gap. And then consumers can apply for it through their MCS certified installer. And we're hoping that'll run for at least 2 years, maybe 3 years, to really help the clean heat market go to where it needs to go, because it's very small at the moment. And heat pumps, of course, is the proven technology for decarbonising heat in our homes. That does need some government support to really help the market. So I doubt it'll be called the Clean Heat Grant, which is why I'm hesitating. It'll have a different name. I think from the point of view of government, there's some connotations here with the Green Homes Grant, which has now come to a close. The Green Homes Grant was criticised by ourselves and industry and was difficult for consumers to navigate. Officials are minded to move forward from that, take that learning and create something new. So it might not be called the Clean Heat Grant. I mean, there's so many, it'll be a grant-based system. What it's going to be called, we don't know yet.
If I could just take this back 1 or 2 points, because I've been kind of mulling it over in my head.
Sure.
So are we to understand that every single air source heat pump that's installed in the UK, so whether it's a Valent or a Grant or irrespective of the brand, that has to go through some sort of certification with the MCS? But what happens if you get somebody that imports, let's say, a machine from the Far East that hasn't been accredited and that's installed in a home? What are the implications with regards to that?
I mean, the implications for the consumer is they won't be able to have an MCS certificate, and an MCS will be written into the legislation that underpins this grant. So if you can't have your MCS certificate, you can't then access the government funding that will be available next year. This is this lock I talked about, where an MCS certified installer must be using MCS certified products. So we can guarantee then the quality of both the product, the device, and its installation, design and installation. So taken together, that's essentially what MCS is. That's the scheme. In that scenario you talk about, you would fail at the first hurdle. Your product wouldn't be MCS certified. So I would encourage that manufacturer to say, okay, you want to gain access to the market, you need to meet minimum quality standards and prove that your product is sufficiently high quality to be installed in the UK.
So that's great to know about how machines and the actual products that you're buying need to be MCS accredited. How do installers become MCS accredited, and what did they go through in order to get that certification?
That's a really good question, and it's something that what I would call the new MCS, certainly under different leadership, mine and the team, we are working hard to make MCS more accessible. So I think it's been criticised in the past that it is quite difficult to become MCS certified. However, I make no excuse for standards. Having a standard is a bar really that you have to meet. So you have to prove that you are meeting that standard. And as an installer, there are certain steps you have to go through. What I would say is to somebody who's thinking about becoming MCS certified, wants to install heat pumps under MCS, they first have to prove that they've got competent people in their business. Now, for a sole trader, that's the individual. So can they meet the competency requirements? So the best way to do that is take a regulated or an approved qualification, be able to evidence to their certification body that they have that qualification. The second step is, because MCS is a business level certification, it's not an individual person level certification. It's about the business. That business needs to demonstrate that it complies with our main standard, which is MCS 001. Neat title. So if you comply to MCS 001, you essentially are evidencing that you can manage quality. So how do you manage the customer interaction? How do you manage the design, effective design of an installation for a given property and a consumer? How do you manage complaints and learn from them? Everybody makes mistakes, but you need to show that you learn from them and you don't make them again. There are some basic requirements in MCS 001 you as a business have to demonstrate.
So when an MCS installer comes to your property and does your very first site visit, what is a homeowner should you be kind of expecting? What kind of questions should that MCS installer be asking? What should they be looking at? What should they be reviewing? So that as a homeowner, you're kind of hearing the right things coming from that installer, and you're thinking, okay, this person knows what they're talking about. They're really looking at the right things, and we're going in the right direction.
Yes, I mean, there's a number of things there. I mean, first of all, you'd expect them to manage that relationship professionally, and under MCS, a contractor business must belong to a regulated consumer code, a CTSI, a Trading Standards Institute code. You know, the respect that's given to you, especially if they're visiting you at your home, to really understand what your needs are from the system that you're looking for. They really ought to be in listening mode versus sales mode. What I would expect the customer to experience is, do they really understand my property, what's in it? Have they assessed that correctly? So things like fabric first, you know, if you're sizing a heat pump, actually you need to make sure that the home is well insulated and ventilated. Then the heat pump you need might be smaller. So really understanding the home that you're in and your use of energy. So lots of listening to then come away and then present you with a design that's well thought out in terms of your home and your use of energy.
And so when that installer goes away, you said they should be coming back and presenting you with a design of some description. I think it even happened to us. And I don't think they were MCS accredited installers. They were. So there were some installers that came back to us with literally just a price, and was almost just an email saying, you know, hi, thanks for the site visit. It was lovely to meet you. This is the price. Is there any mechanisms that could be put in place that could make it a little bit more consistent from the installer's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what standards are for. They're about creating that level playing field, a consistent approach to how you do this. So your first scenario, that's bad news. That really shouldn't be the way it is. So MCS offers templates, calculators, tools to allow installers to, you know, MCS, if you like, is a route to market. It's the rule book for the market. So we would expect MCS contractors, installers to follow the rule book. However, having said that, there's always things we can do to make our scheme more accessible, and we're working on that now. So initiatives to help you do heat loss calculations, which are really important when you're thinking about taking a renewable heating source into your home. I think the domestic heating sector has become lazy, really, in terms of the gas industry. You bit like with there isn't really a design process that's gone through. We've sort of lost those skills, and so MCS and others are really trying to educate, re-educate, and energize installers to do the right thing in terms of designing systems that are going to be fit for purpose. For a heat pump, you need room by room heat loss calculations. You need to understand that so you can properly size the heating device that you're going to be using. But then you also need to consider the pipe work and the radiators, the heat emitters that are already in the house. Are they going to work at low temperature, which is the technology we're talking about? It works at lower temperature. This requires a design discipline that's important to make sure that you as a consumer get the right system for your home and for your needs.
From a protection perspective, obviously you do get installers that come through, that they do a thorough job, but there's only so much that they can often see that's inside the wall. So for example, you've got insulation or the pipework. They can't always know what's happening in there. And I can speak from our experience that it took us maybe 2 winters to fully start to realize that there were still some design issues with our system, the way that it was set up. So from going back to the whole protection aspect of it, how long do you have the MCS's backing to try and get a system rectified, given that this isn't flicking a switch and seeing whether something works or not? You do have to give it time. So how long do you have?
a credible installer should take responsibility for the installations for a long period of time until they've gone through a harsh winter or been proven. We know that MCS installers, certainly in the scheme today, hang around. These are installers who want to do the best by consumers. However, we do, through a membership of a consumer code, which is a customer protection element of the scheme, we expect all installers to offer a guarantee on the workmanship that they put into delivering your installation, and we expect them to ensure that. So if for any reason they cease to trade within a minimum 2 years, hopefully longer. So if you've got problems within the first 2 years, but your installer is no longer there for you to talk to, or you've got a dispute with that installer, then this is where the consumer code element of MCS kicks in. And there's an insurance-backed warranty, they're called. So that insurance is something that your installer takes out to underpin the guarantee that they've given you that they've delivered the right system for you. If you've got any problems, then you should be talking to your installer first, always. If you're in dispute with that installer, or that installer is no longer trading for whatever reason, then you can always talk to MCS, and we will try and help you determine whether it's a technical issue, a design issue, a manufacturer's warranty issue, and sometimes a user issue. Have you really understood the difference between your old system and your new system? Because they are different.
We know that we are heading towards 600,000 heat pump installations by 2028. I would assume that there are insufficient installers at the moment in the UK to carry out such a huge number. So what provisions and plans are the MCS potentially putting in place to make sure that we can guarantee that a huge proportion of those heat pumps that are put in are actually going to be put in properly and competently?
Yeah, you're right. First of all, the market is small. The numbers of contractor businesses under MCS is just over 1,000. They're businesses, so they have many installers in them. But we estimate that each contractor has about 3 installer gangs on average. Now, there's some really big installers, household names, and some small SME, small businesses. We see the challenge there of creating a quality supply chain of really competent installers who can do the things we've already talked about in this interview, but that's going to take some time to get to. The plans for that are robust qualifications. So prove your competency through achieving a qualification. And there are already conversion courses, for want of a better phrase. So if you're an oil-fired heating engineer or gas heating engineer, gas installer or plumber, you can take courses to top up those skills so that you can fit an air source heat pump, and then the next step is a ground source heat pump. So those courses are now coming online. They've been delayed a little bit by COVID and classroom restrictions, but they're all now there. And MCS is one place you can come to find out what qualifications we would accept under our scheme. We're calling on government for that long-term policy environment, really, that supportive environment that means that as individuals we go, yes, I'm going to retrain. I'm a gas installer today, and I want to be able to offer my customers air source heat pumps. Increasingly, they're asking me for this. We want them to see and be encouraged by that this market is going to grow and is growing, not as fast as anybody wants, but it will start to grow quite significantly over the coming years. MCS is also a trailblazer for a brand new apprenticeship. So we recognise that we want school leavers to think about this sector as a career choice. And so we have a new apprenticeship that will be available in September next year. It's just about written and been consulted on, and it's a low carbon heating technician apprenticeship. Wow. It complements the current plumbing and domestic heating apprenticeship, but this is a specialist route. So if you want to get in, be a net zero engineer, and you want to get into the market and start fitting heat pumps and solar thermal systems, then the low carbon heating technician is for you. I'm really pleased to say there are a few colleges now that are interested. They can see that this would put bums on the seats and get people coming through the doors, which is important. We've got to inspire a next generation of installer, and the MCS has done quite a lot of work with the likes of Offtech, which is in the oil-fired heating sector, to really help demonstrate that this is a massive opportunity actually for heating engineers today. And how do they grow their businesses? We want them to take apprenticeships and get those green jobs into the market that the government talks about. So yeah, conversion courses and new entrants to the sector. Apprenticeships.
Just talking about, for example, inheriting a property that's got a heat pump or any kind of renewables, it would be so wonderful as somebody who's purchasing a home, if the MCS accredited machinery could be almost part of the survey. When you pay for a surveyor to go out to a property and to look at the bricks and mortar and give you that kind of professional opinion that yes, that this house has got these issues, or this house is valued correctly and it has everything in it, looks like it's functioning. It would be so wonderful if they could also just step outside and actually kind of look or ask the homeowner at that stage, I'm doing the survey, I'm here to do the survey, I've noticed that you've got a heat pump, is this MCS accredited? And be able to incorporate that into a surveyor's report would just be so valuable to homeowners looking to purchase homes where they are potentially inheriting something that they just don't know when it was done, who it was done by, and how it was done.
Absolutely. And it's a very common call to the MCS Helpdesk. Have I got an MCS certificate on the device I'm buying with the property? And we can help them answer that question. We run the MCS installations database. That data is there, and we can support them with that. If they're buying a property that's already got an MCS certificate, of course, the certificate should come with the property. If we don't capture the consumer details, we're interested in the installation at that particular address. So our certificates it doesn't show Ian Rippin owns a heat pump at my address. It says my address, this is the heat pump, this is its capacity, this is who installed it, this is when it was installed. So it's got all those details, really useful information on the MCS certificate.
So as a homeowner, if you're looking at purchasing a home that the seller is saying to you, yes, we've got a heat pump, don't worry, it's all MCS accredited, everything's fine above board, you could actually contact the MCS and say, look, I'm in the process of purchasing this home. Can you tell me, does this address have an MCS accreditation? That is like gold. I mean,
we'd love to tell you that. Now, if you want a copy of the certificate, because actually the seller should be giving you a copy of the certificate, but say they've lost it. I mean, when you buy a home, you get all those guarantees, you put them in a box, don't you? And you hope you never need them. So it's not in that box of stuff, and you haven't got that handover pack the MCS installer should be giving to every consumer. Ring the MCS Helpdesk. They can tell you whether there is a certificate there or not. Now, if you want a copy of it, you will have to pay £30 plus VAT for that, because there's some work involved in creating the certificate again and sending it to you.
That is so interesting and so valuable, and I really think that we need to start really shouting that from the rooftops. Listen, if you're going to buy a home, even for me, I did not know that. So if I was, now I know that I have to make sure that when we, hopefully we sell this property in like 20, 30, 40 years time. But when we sell, we've got those certificates in place to hand over. And also, if we were to move and purchase a new property, to be able to have that where I can check with MCS, I think that's just brilliant. And we need to kind of share that message, because that's really important. That's another thing on your checklist as a purchaser when you're buying something that you need to kind of have top of mind.
There is an initiative to try and create a property passport, a data warehouse that will incorporate MCS, but also lots of other things that you may have had, lots of home improvements you've made. And that's through a program called TrustSmart, which is a government endorsed quality scheme. MCS provides data to TrustSmart. Some people like ringing up and finding out, and absolutely that's why the MCS Helpdesk is there. But then solicitors want to do a quick search, or you want to have a quick look, you can see what's been done to that property since it was built, and what certificates exist, including the MCS certificate. So this idea of having a property passport, which I think is really neat, I don't think it's actually called that, but that's my term for it.
It's a good one.
Yes, well, it sort of says what it is, doesn't it? So your MCS would be part of that. So that's something called, that's the TrustSmart Data Warehouse, which MCS is supporting the build of. So yeah, you wonder where your data goes. You raise a certificate and it goes, where does it go? So we look after it for you, but we're also using it for initiatives like that with the property passport.
I think that something like that is so unbelievably needed. I really, really do. This was our first property that we had ever purchased, and I was slightly mortified and terrified about just how kind of almost lax it was with regards to you know, we had the survey done, we paid for the top of the range survey, the best, most intensive survey we could, and even then we still got called out on so many different things once we purchased and moved into the property. And I think that having, for example, a property passport, which I think I think that's it. I think you've named it now, so we're going to brand it that. So I think that having a property passport is would just be brilliant and just so beneficial and to homeowners. You know, you take on a property and you kind of just get given the keys and that's it. A lot of the time that is just it. So, you know, I think that would be really, really brilliant. I would really support that.
Definitely.
The technology, you might not be used to this technology. So some support in understanding what you bought and how does it work and what your expectations should be of it, as well as having the MCS certificate as the, you know, that's the guarantee that it's been installed correctly. In theory, anyway, that's what it should be. So, yeah, I mean, that's what this is all about, really, instilling confidence in consumers.
Now, we have heard of instances where people have purchased properties, new builds, that have had an air source heat pump installed, but them, as homeowners, were not privy to getting the RHI payments for those. It actually went to the developers. Is that true?
It is true. Domestic RHI does not apply to new build. There are other tax incentives around new build. So RHI is available in a retrofit in an existing home that wants to deploy low carbon heating, a heat pump. So that is right. It's not available to the new build sector. However, the government is looking at legislation around what's called the Future Home Standard that will come into force from 2025. So my view is that consumers should be treated the same. They should expect the same level of quality, irrespective of the age of the home. We're advocating that new build property, as well as retrofit existing homes, should benefit from MCS standards. And so the government department that's responsible for that is consulting on how do they put MCS standards into the future home standard. So when you buy, and increasingly you're going to buy new build property that's low carbon, it's got solar, integrated solar on the roof, it's benefiting from a heat pump or a heat network or whatever the technology is, you will know then as a consumer, as a buyer, okay, so this actually meets a standard that I can read and it's in the public domain. That's what's coming. But yes, to answer the question, the specific question, domestic RHI is not available for new build, as in house building estates. It is available for self-build, and it is available for if you're converting a barn, say, and you're turning it into a home for the first time, you can then benefit because MCS applies there, but you haven't got long because domestic RHI comes to an end in March next year.
I think it's just so it's an industry that so needs a body like MCS, and as homeowners, you know, quite frankly, as a homeowner, you can't really have too many MCSs. You know, you do want as many safety nets in the industry as possible to catch you at all different stages, you know, whether it's the ombudsman or an MCS or a home insurance policy. You know, you do want those you know, cushions around you to give you that you know, confidence that you're putting your money in the correct part of your home.
Absolutely. You want that reassurance, don't you? And I think what you'll see from MCS over the next year is we really want to position ourselves as the help desk for the sector, because you listed quite a few things there that you can help a consumer, but you might not know that as a consumer. So you think, well, is it working as it should? Have I bought the right thing? Why is it doing this? I can't get hold of my installer. You know, whatever it may be, we'll help you navigate through this. So, you know, a single number that you can call, and then we'll do the legwork to try and find the best person to help you. I mean, in some cases, we send out our what we call scheme support. So we can send people to your address to diagnose problems. We don't do that very often because there's not many of them, but we've only got 1,000 installers, so it's quite small, but that will grow over time as MCS grows. So there is that capability in MCS for the first time this year. It's only just happened since beginning of the year, to actually send ex-installers, really great people out to come and diagnose the problem with your system. Because we think that's what the sector needs to get to 600,000 heat pumps a year. It needs that reassurance that, I don't know. And why should you know? As a consumer, I've got a problem. It's not warm enough on the coldest days. Well, why would you? What's wrong with it? Am I using it correctly? We're so very polite, aren't we? And we don't complain as the British don't complain correctly. And I think this is why MCS can help you.
With regards to homeowners, how can they find an MCS installer?
Come onto our website, MCS-certified, all one word.com. There's a installer search capability there. We also know that not everybody wants to use the internet. So again, that's another reason to call the MCS website. That's actually a very common call from a particular type of customer who doesn't really want to be bothered with an internet search, actually wants to talk to a real person and go, look, I live in Chester and I'm thinking of having a heat pump on my home. Who would you recommend that you use? So we'd recommend an MCS certified installer. It's not always the case that the closest installer is the best installer, of course, but that does help, knowing that they're just around the corner and accessible to you. So we offer that service where we'll give you the details of a few installers in your area that are certified for the technology you're interested in. And you can do that on the website, or you can do that through the help desk.
Well, I think that it's been a brilliant interview, Ian, and I just want to thank you so much for your time. I know you're very busy at the MCS, and you're certainly going to be busy in the coming years, that is for sure. And thank you very much for joining us today. Can you just recap on what some of the biggest takeaways are for our audience, and what you kind of want them to leave this interview with top of mind, and hopefully use when they're looking at MCS and looking at having renewables installed in their property?
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today. I've really enjoyed the discussion. For the homeowner then, I would say think MCS. MCS is the quality assurance for this sector. So if you're thinking about renewable energy for your home, something we call homegrown energy, because something that's homegrown you feel proud in. So if you're thinking about having your own homegrown energy on your house, then MCS is the place to come in terms of making sure that you're working with a quality provider. And also for the homeowner, in looking at things like heat pumps, there are government incentives that are coming on the horizon. So this market is in its infancy, although it's been around for a while. So watch out, and you can look to MCS for this. Watch out for what's coming next. So domestic renewable heat incentive is coming to an end, but there is something else that will hit us before the summer next year in terms of a grant-based system. So there's that.
Great, Ian. Thank you so much. We're not going to take up any more of your time, and I hope you have a great week. And we really hope that you will come back and see us again, and we can talk through, especially next year. Let's try and get you to come back and tell us some big news next year. That would be really wonderful.
You can count on it. Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you guys.
Much.
Cheerio. Bye-bye. Bye.